Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. So I'm just going to skip right to the point today. Friends don't let friends have effed up finances. Yes, that is how I'm starting off this podcast. Let me say it one more time for you. Friends do not let friends have effed up finances. As we close out 2018 and head into 2019, I know my number one goal is to be talking to my friends more, getting in my friends' business more. Ooh, I know people are like, hey, don't get in my business. Hold on 1 second, Lauren, where are you going with this? But if we really care about our friends, our fave five, the people that we want to retire with, the people that we want to spend the rest of our lives being friends with, then we need to get in their financial business and let them in ours so that we can all be great together, because friends don't let friends have effed up finances. We need to start sharing what we know and what we don't know. And if you've never done that before, 2019 is the year to do it. Check out the service offering called Friends Don't Let Friends Have Effed Up Finances. Let's rent out a place, go on a trip, have a retreat where you get your best friends, your other couples together, and we really nail down what your finances look like for 2019 and beyond. Let's start creating the transparency, and let's do that in the presence of a financial professional. So if you are interested in helping not just yourself, but helping your friends get their finances organized heading into 2019, then check out the Friends Don't Let Friends financial offering at worth-winning.com. Okay, today my guest is Malcolm Lemmons, a former professional athlete turned author and entrepreneur. Yes, he wrote a book called Lessons from the Game, which details his story of becoming a professional athlete and the key life lessons he learned while playing sports. Also, he's the founder of Players Point Agency, a company that helps current and former athletes expand their influence and grow their presence online. I know I need him in my life. And as if that's not enough hats to be wearing, he's also the host of a podcast called Players Point Podcast, which features in-depth interviews of current and former athletes, as well as other people in the sports industry. Yes, Malcolm is killing it at life, and he shares his financial story with us today. We talk about all things from life as a professional athlete, playing overseas, not counting what's in other people's pockets. Yes, I'm talking about money. So frequently we start thinking about what others have and how they should be spending what they have and how much they make because of what their profession is. But it's not our job to count other people's money. It's our job to be responsible with what's in our pocket. So Malcolm and I talk about that today. We also talk about why he thinks it's important to be constantly having discussions with friends about money. Let's listen as Malcolm shares his money memoir. Malcolm, thanks so much for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I think we're going to have a great money talk. I'd like to start by going back, way back, all the way to the beginning of time.
Okay.
Tell us what money was like for you growing up.
Well, I was born and raised in D.C., lived in the city, moved around a lot. It was just me, my brother, and my mom. And money was something that wasn't really talked about between us. My mom worked multiple jobs trying to raise us. And we kind of just were used to the struggle. We didn't really know it was a struggle because it was how we lived our entire lives. But as I got older and started to look back and recognize my upbringing, it was like we really went through some turbulent times, but money was something that my mom never, ever really made a big issue in our lives and our family. She just kind of did what she could to give us the best upbringing that she could and just provide for us in any way possible. Like I said, whether I was working multiple jobs, not being home, but We didn't see money as an issue because she didn't make it an issue. But as I grew older and started to understand what money was and what money was about, I started to recognize I didn't have a lot of it growing up.
Where are you from?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Okay. Thinking about like how it was, like you said, growing up, you said you didn't notice in the moment, but was there like a defining moment where you realized that, hey, this is a little bit different than the other people around me? Or can you describe when you knew something was different?
I went to private school. So I grew up in the city and I was around a lot of inner city kids. But when I went to school, I went to private school. So I was around kids who were more privileged than I was, who had, material things that I didn't have. And you start to see things like that, but it doesn't really register in middle school. I didn't really pay it that much attention. But as I went to high school, I went to one of the most prestigious high schools in the DC area called Gonzaga. And I'm going to school with kids who, their parents are senators and CEOs and just entrepreneurs and people who are of high prestige. And you really recognize it when you get to that age. For me, I was in high school with kids who just had a lot more than I did. But I didn't let that deter me from wanting more in my life or being like something that what was me type thing. I just kind of saw it as something that I could aspire to reach as well. As like these kids have this or they're at a certain stature in their life that I can attain. I can get that too. Why can't I have money? I just need to put myself in a position to do so. So it was more of a motivation and inspiration to get to a point where I could have money in my life one day.
I like that. I like to call that focusing on the opportunities, not the obstacles.
Exactly. That's what it's about.
People that they're, like you said, woe is me, or looking at what they don't have instead of trying to make the most of what they do have.
Exactly.
You notice that the people around you had more in school, but what about your living conditions growing up, the environment around you, maybe even like the people around you, aunts or uncles, or did you see any influences or money behaviors that stand out to you from back then?
I can't really say. Well, I had people in my family who did better than others, of course. My mom is a doctor, so she, by definition, middle class citizen, but she struggled especially during the recession when I was middle school to high school. From that period of my life, she struggled to find jobs, which is why she had to work multiple jobs. But as far as like seeing other people in my life who maybe had money or maybe didn't, I don't know. I just kind of paid attention to my mom and what she had to do to raise my brother and I, and just witnessing that, her struggling and kind of just seeing it for what it was. I didn't know at the time. And just as I said, as I grew older, I started to recognize that you can obtain it, what you can do and how you can use it as a tool in your life.
And what sort of things did your family spend money on? Were there like vacations? Was there an allowance?
We got allowance. We didn't really go on any vacations. We didn't eat out a lot. If we ate out, it was like fast food and stuff, but it wasn't like going to restaurants and things of that nature. But everything that I had in my life or I had to pay for, I didn't, I had an entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. So I was the kid selling candy and water bottles and T-shirts and flipping shoes. Like I did all of that stuff in middle school and high school. So everything that I got, I had to get on my own. But my mom did give us allowance for like doing chores and things of that nature. And it wasn't like a substantial amount of money. It was like $10 to take out the garbage or something like that, something small like that. And I think it was more so to instill, the value of hard work and discipline. But everything that I wanted, if I wanted like an Xbox or PlayStation or anything, I had to figure out how to get it on my own.
I think it's dope because it teaches you like the importance of working in order to get the things that you need or even the things that you want. So
right.
There were so many values being taught there in the midst of, you said, like attaching it to doing something in order to get the money versus just handing over the money.
Exactly.
I think you also brought up a really good point too. You mentioned your mom was a doctor, and I think a lot of the perception around doctors is that you're automatically rich. There's an immediate button that you press, and doctors are all super wealthy. And you've described kind of being, like you said, middle class there. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe what some of the misperceptions are or what you experienced?
I think that kind of goes across the board for every title. I mean, you could be a CEO, but if the business is not doing well or something of that nature, doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lot of money. So you can have the title, but that doesn't necessarily come with financial success. So I think that was a common misconception for my mom, is like people expect her to have all this money, but here we are. She's a single parent raising two African-American kids in Washington, D.C., which is already an expensive city to live in. And she struggled. Like I remember driving to one job working not being able to pick us up from school because she had to go to another job. And it's just like things like that is just, you don't really understand what's going on in someone's life until you have some context or some background knowledge or information on that lifestyle. So that was something that was eye-opening for me. It was like, yeah, everybody knew my mom was a doctor, but we didn't have the amount of money that people thought we did.
Yeah. I think it just brings up a really good point about this perception and this idea. Like I always say, like, don't count my pockets.
Right.
And that's even what this podcast is about, this idea of it's not about the numbers, it's about the strategies that people are implementing. And so frequently someone, you said, takes the perception of what they heard about a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who has multiple degrees and automatically assumes when one, it's, not your place to be counting someone else's pocket anyway. But in addition to that, the things that are not always as they seem as it pertains to like what the earnings are for particular professions. And now there's student loans to add to the mix.
Right.
And the playing field is a lot more level when we start having conversations with people and start being more transparent about what it is, but also being responsible for what you have versus, like you said, assuming someone has this or that. And I don't know if your mom had people asking her for money frequently because they assumed, like you said, that in the position that she was in, she had you said there was unlimited income or something.
Right. And I think a major factor to that as well is like you can be making a certain amount of money, but if the area that you're living in is expensive to live in, you have debt, you're not really making that much money and you have to support other people. Like that was a situation that my mom was in. It was like probably being in a higher percentile of earners in America. But at the same time, she's living in one of the most expensive cities. She has to provide for 2 kids and she might still have student loans from when she went to medical school. Like all these things play a factor. And it's not until you get older you realize, how big debt is and how much it can really weigh you down.
Yeah. You say more money, more problems. There's a lot of responsibilities that come along with the earnings. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. To kind of remind myself, I remember when I graduated from high school, my mom actually couldn't even afford to pay for my last semester of tuition. And I almost didn't even finish high school because of that. And like stories like that she didn't tell us back then. And then she tells you as you get older, you start to really have a greater understanding and more appreciation for what your parents do for you. She actually had to borrow money to pay for my tuition so I could get my high school degree.
Yeah. It's the dope sacrifice that the parents make for us that, we don't realize. Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about high school. Was there, did you get a job right at age 16 when people are most first able to work? Were you working before then? I know you mentioned a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So how was your money life or how were you handling? What do you remember about money during that age?
I didn't have time to get a job per se because I played basketball. In your high school, you play in year-round AAU, the season. So basketball took up so much of my life that everything that I did to make money was like a side hustle. And I just kind of did it because I liked it. Like I would take my tuition money and, not my tuition money, my allowance money, and I would go buy shoes. Or if I got like money for Christmas or any type of holiday like that, I would take that. I would go buy some t-shirts online and I would resell them. So I did things like that to kind of fuel my entrepreneurial drive and spirit. And that was really what I did to make money. But it was more so not for my love of money, but just because I liked that game. I liked the process of being an entrepreneur and kind of doing your own thing and having luxury to make money on your own time, on your own schedule. And that's really how I started to learn about, money, profits, losses, things of that nature.
I think it's pretty cool that you already had that entrepreneurial spirit because kind of down that road right now. So we'll get to that later, but it's always nice to put the whole story together and realize like, hey, this was something that was ingrained in me from kind of day one. So.
Right. I don't know where it came from because I don't even think I have one entrepreneur in my family. So it's just something that I was born with. It's kind of in my DNA.
All right. So now we're going to college. And what kind of happened around college? I know you said it was tough kind of finishing out that last semester of high school. Mm-hmm. So were you in a situation where like how was college going to be paid for or what were the conversations around that?
Oh, well, I was fortunate enough to have a scholarship to go play basketball in college. I actually decommitted the 2 weeks after I graduated high school because the coach left. So probably mid-June, I didn't know where I was going to school. I had another school called Niagara University kind of come out of the blue. And they recruited me really hard. I went up there for a visit and committed on the spot. So that's kind of how I got to college. But I was, like I said, very fortunate enough to have the ability to go to school for free and not have any debt when I was graduating college.
So this might be another place where people kind of jump in and they're like, well, you went to school for free, so you were definitely balling because there was no student loan debt. You didn't have to live like a broke college student. But can you kind of describe what it was like living as a college student and where money came from? Like you said, your tuition, your room and board taken care of, but were they also writing you a fat check every month and you were living the high life?
So I think that's another misconception when it comes to college athletes. I think we're seeing it now more than ever with the multiple lawsuits that have been put out there about student athletes being exploited for their talents and not getting paid to play. That's a huge topic nowadays. And when I was in college, we didn't have time to get a job. We got study hall, we got weights, we got individual workouts, we got practice, we got all these things. So it's no time to work. And if you don't have time to work, then how are you getting paid? These regular students, they can go out and get a job, a part-time job while they're still taking classes. We don't have that ability. So we didn't really have any money. If we wanted to eat off campus, we had to get money from our parents if they could send it to us. But that, like I said, that's another misconception. Like people think student athletes have it really good. It's a very, very difficult situation to be in, all the way from low major Division II athletes all the way up to high major guys. Like you hear the stories about players getting paid under the table, but a lot of times that's not the case. And there's a lot of student athletes out here struggling to eat, to do things outside of being an athlete, like going to the movies on the weekend, for example. I had teammates when I was in college, they couldn't even afford to do things just for fun on the weekend. So I think a lot of people don't understand that perception of being a college athlete and how much time, energy, and effort you spend just on your sport, that you can't do anything else. You don't have the ability to go out and gain real world skills or to get a job or to bring in some type of income. So you're struggling.
But you are at college age, like 18. So, even if you're 17, when you get to college, this is like the first time that you're a quote unquote adult. So you get to this like age 18 and you're working on getting to 21, which most people do get to before they get out of school. As a grown up, quote unquote, even though you're kind of under the college umbrella, a little bit protected because you still got this education, this thing you're working toward. Were there any like adult conversations being had about money with your friends, or what kind of conversations were being had with the people that you were around in college?
I mean, the extent of the conversations we had about money is everybody's trying to be a pro. I mean, we all trying to get to the pro level and get paid to do what we love to do. And that was really it. We didn't have anybody come in and tell us like, about taxes and a budget sheet. Like we didn't have this information in college. There were no classes that taught us these things. And as athletes, like I said, you spend so much time on the court and ain't nobody's talking to you about what life after sports is going to be like, or how you have to become an actual adult in the real world. Like these topics weren't discussed. We're just trying to, like I said, just get paid to play basketball. That was the goal. And a lot of my teammates came from the inner city. They were guys from Philadelphia, from New York. Their whole mindset since they were young, which is kind of put on, that pressure is put on from their families, is like, you're the ticket. We want you. Everybody's putting pressure on them to go make it for the neighborhood, to make it for their families, to provide. And it was just like, get money by any means necessary. And that's kind of the mindset that a lot of my teammates had. I was fortunate enough to come from more of a middle class background. Mom had some, a better education and understanding of money. So I had people around me who mentor me and guide me better than some of my teammates. But a lot of those guys, they just were trying to make it to the professional level by any means necessary.
And what percent would you say made it to the professional level?
Let me see. Let me think about it a little bit. Out of my 4 years playing in college, I could say that 5 of us, of all my teammates that I had in college, maybe 5 people, including me, made it to play professionally in some fashion.
And so around how many athletes was that over the 4 years then that were on the various teams with you?
Close to 50, 60 guys.
Exactly. 5 out of 50, right. That's actually a really high percentage, I would say even.
Yeah, and some of those guys are still playing overseas. Yeah.
To bring the point that like 45 people, like you said, if it was 45 of people's plans to make it to the pros and maybe 5 of them, banking on their education, and actually 5 made it to the pros and 45 needed to be the ones banking on their education. Just that huge disconnect that exists. And I don't know what the answer is for us to be able to close that gap, but I think it's always a point to bring it up. Like you said, and there was no financial literacy being taught. There's no real life skills. And I see it changing now in the college world where they're starting to offer these life skills programs and they're bringing in speakers and they're trying to equip athletes for kind of life after college and, what comes next. Because a lot of people, they're only making a plan A and there's no plan B. And the plan B is a lot more important for most of those athletes than their quote unquote plan A.
Right, right. And I mean, sports is a means to an end anyway, because there comes a day for every athlete when they have to retire. No matter how long you play, most guys aren't going to end up like LeBron or Kobe or Michael Jordan, who make enough money to where they don't have to do anything once they retire. A lot of guys are going to have to figure out what their next step is going to be. So it's even more crucial now that we're making an impact on younger athletes to understand that you can still chase that dream, but at the same time, you got to be able to do other things in life and be prepared for when the game ends, whether that's 5 years from down the line or 15. You always have to be prepared for that next step.
For sure, for sure. All right, so tell us what happened after college then. You finish up and ...
So I had an opportunity to go play over in Japan. So I took that up first year, went over there, and it was just absolutely a horrible experience. I didn't have a bed my first week out there. They weren't paying us, didn't give us any money. We had to walk to practice. So it was bad.
So you get out of school and you apply for the draft then, and then is it kind of like you don't get drafted and then you go to Japan, or how do you get to Japan?
So let me backtrack a little bit. I transferred my last year of school and went to school out in California, a school called Cal State San Marcos. So I finished up there, and I wasn't talented enough to be able to afford the opportunity to play in the NBA. So I had a coach that I knew that went over and was going to be an assistant coach for a team in Japan. And as soon as I finished school, he offered me a contract to come play out there. And it just seemed like a perfect situation. I knew the coach. Everything he told me was going to be great. It was a new program. But I had a lot of trust in him and felt like this was my best bet to take that next step. My dream was always to play professional basketball, and this was the opportunity that I've been waiting for. So I took that up and left in August. And like I said, it was just it was just a terrible experience just because nothing was prepared in advance. Like I said, it was a new team. The general manager had gotten sick 2 weeks before I left. And after that, everything fell apart. Like nothing was organized, nothing was in order. And so once we got out there, me and my other teammates, it was just kind of chaos. And I just felt like it wasn't what I imagined professional basketball would be. So that's why I ended up leaving after about a month and a half, 2 months.
Oh, so you made it through 2 months in Japan. Even did you ever get paid? You said you had a contract. So.
I mean, they gave us a little bit of money here and there, but nowhere near what we were supposed to get paid.
And do you think that was the sponsorship money didn't come in, or like I understand someone got ill, but
to this day, I still don't know. I still don't know to this day.
It just wasn't what it was supposed to be.
It wasn't what it was supposed to be. And oftentimes, people, I think over the past several years, playing basketball overseas has been really glamorized because you get to travel, you get to see different parts of the world, you get to play a game and get paid. But a lot of times it's not that. It's very difficult. You have to be away from your family for a long period of time. You can run into a lot of money issues with teams. Like you said, sponsorships may run dry. You may get into disagreements with the organization about just different things that they feel like they don't want to pay you. They're not going to pay you, and they can send you home at any time. So it's a very unstable and volatile situation to be in. And I've heard numerous stories of athletes just running into legal troubles and teams owing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just something that you just have to be aware of and have some type of guidance or, someone in your corner who's really going to have your back if you're looking to play basketball overseas.
So how long were you overseas?
So I finished out those 2 months, came home, and I worked out for a couple of G League teams, the Lakers G League team, Santa Cruz Warriors G League team, and nothing kind of came out of that. So I worked 2 jobs when I came back home and just trying to support myself, but all with hopes of going back overseas. So I was working out the whole time. And then that next season, I actually had another opportunity to come back out to Japan and play in Tokyo. So I took that up and went back out there the second year.
Okay. And it went better the second time around?
It was better, but it was more money issues. I mean, more money issues. The team really wasn't that good. Playing overseas is very difficult. It's very, very hard if, things are in order. And management was really bad on the team that I played on in Tokyo. We weren't winning many games, but I stuck it out. I came a little before the halfway point of the season, and I stayed to the end of the season. And it wasn't what I imagined professional basketball to be like. And for me, it was disappointing, but at the same time, I valued the experience because I was able to live in another country, see a different part of the world, and just embrace new things and being open to play the rest of that season. And came back home and kind of decided to put basketball on the backside. I felt like I lived out my dream a little bit and did something that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do.
Talk a little bit about during that time period, what it was like organizing your finances. So you didn't have like dependable income. Then you came home, you had the two different jobs, and then you went back, and there's no like every 2 weeks, nice, clean, steady paycheck that you can count on. So what was happening during that time period? How were you trying to figure out how to organize things, or, did you do that well or not well?
So after that first season or first time playing in Japan and coming back home, I had never really worked a real job before. This was my first time kind of getting into the real world and figuring out how to put out my resume and go on job interviews and all these different things and clubs. So I was kind of odd jobs, but they taught me a lot about just being a professional, showing up on time, like things that I used, in the sports world, being an athlete. I was able to transition over into these two jobs that I have, and I started to make a little bit of income. But the one thing that I really realized is that even though guys, you have this perception of being a professional athlete and people think you might make a lot of money, I realized that from playing basketball overseas, it wasn't going to be enough to last me even through the summer. And that was even like a realization for myself, second time playing in Japan where, I made some money. I came back home, had some money in my pocket, but it wasn't nearly enough to support myself. And a lot of guys come home from playing overseas. They have to get jobs. They have to do other things to make income because it's not as much money as people think it is. And that was really a wake up call for me. And I had to really understand how to budget my money, how to save. Even when I was younger, I've never been really materialistic or spent a lot of money in the first place. Becoming an adult, you really have to understand, how to, like I said, how to budget your money, how to, where your money is going after taxes, and all these little basic financial principles that you have to take into account as you become an adult and as you realize you have to manage your money effectively if you want more in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, like you said, come up with that realization of, okay, I need a budget. I need to figure out, like you said, I always tell people, like, if you don't tell your money where to go, then you'll be wondering where it went, sort of thing. And so if you don't have that realization, I think the paycheck to paycheck mentality is born because you're just living in the moment. And it's, even if there is a little bit left to save, there's not a real plan for like, what am I doing with this money? What job is this money for? What are the goals I'm trying to reach? You're just like, live, keep roof overhead, eat, live, keep roof overhead, eat, and then repeat. But really like creating a budget that says like, okay, this is what it looks like. This is the way I want to spend my money. It's a complete mindset. So, all right. So tell us what happened next then. So we're done with basketball, but you felt like you were able to close that chapter like smoothly. Yeah.
So what really allowed me to close that chapter during my second time playing overseas in Japan, I had, a lot of free time on my hands. So I started to write just as a sense of therapy. And I started to think about, how did I get to this point? What obstacles that I went through to become a professional athlete? How is this experience going to tie into the rest of my life? Like I said, I started to write a lot, and that allowed me to, formulate a lot of thoughts. It really started my transition to life after sports because I saw other options for me. So I came back home and I was telling people what I've been doing over there. People asking, you got all this free time. What are you doing with your time? And I was like, I've just been writing. So I started to show people the things that I've been writing about, my experiences, the obstacles. And I was able to get in touch with the publisher and actually turn all of those experiences into a book. And publishing that book was really the door that opened my eyes to new opportunities, like I said. And I decided to put basketball to the side because I felt like I needed to make a bigger impact with my platform being an athlete. And the book was going to be the way that I did that. So I published a book, and I was doing a lot of speaking opportunities, having a lot of speaking opportunities in the DC area, talking to younger athletes, just about the reality of being Division I athlete or professional athlete, and which you can use from sports to transition over into life. But starting to build my brand and talking about those things and those experiences allowed me to close the chapter on basketball and to become an entrepreneur and do other things outside of just being an athlete.
All right. So tell us a little bit about where you are today and how it all kind of played out.
So I feel like I retired yesterday, but it's been about 2 years now since I walked away from basketball. And right now, I started a marketing branding company working with athletes, entrepreneurs, and executives on building their personal brand and trying to figure out, how to monetize their platform. I started that company earlier this year. I also have a podcast called the Players Point Podcast, and I interview current and former athletes on a variety of different topics, helping them have a platform to tell their stories and talk about their experiences. So that's really where I'm at today, trying to build a brand, trying to figure out what entrepreneurship is really like and diving headfirst into that.
So are you full-time working on your businesses now?
Mm-hmm, full-time.
Awesome. So talk a little bit about the idea of like how you set it up, how you created a runway to be able to do this. Because usually like you start a business and money just doesn't fall out of the sky. It takes a little while to get going. So what has that been like?
Right. Yeah. So, I had to work at odd jobs, do different things to kind of support myself and actually have that kind of leverage to start a business. The book supported me a lot, doing speaking engagements supported me, but also just saving your money. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I said, I've never been one to just spend frivolously or just buy things that I don't need. So I've always been very smart with my money, and that's allowed me to have that kind of leg room to work with as far as having money to survive, but also to build a clientele, to build and grow a business. Because you need, from what I heard, you need 6 months advance to start a business. So that's the kind of mindset that I took when I started. I was going to have.
Is that what you did then? You had 6 months
of saved up income to survive, with building this company. So I think that's the biggest thing that you really have to understand is that you need capital to build a company, and whether that's to survive or to just have some way to support yourself going forward. So saving money is absolutely crucial when you're trying to start a venture or any type of entrepreneurial endeavor.
And then as it pertains to, like you said, they're doing marketing and branding for others. Can you talk a little bit about like what goes into that and like where you got the expertise and like, how do you convince others, like in a world where everybody has a social media account, how do you convince others that there's value in hiring someone to help them with their brand?
As we know, social media really runs the world. Content is king nowadays. And if you're not producing content online, you're essentially irrelevant. If you're trying to build a company or become a speaker or an author, or anything of this nature, you have to be out here producing content, getting people to know what you're about, building awareness around your message and the things that you're trying to do within your platform. And so that's really kind of where we come in. We kind of streamline that whole process and help you create content and repurpose content that's directly tied into your goals and your vision for what your brand is and what you want to do going forward. And I think a lot of people want to create content, but they may not know how, or they don't have the time to do so when you're running a company. So having a service that kind of takes that off of your hands and allows you to focus on what you need to focus on, but knowing that you're still putting out content that pertains to what your overall mission is very crucial and is very important. And I kind of got the idea and the expertise from what I was able to do with myself, putting out content, writing, speaking, podcasting, like all these different things that have allowed me to put out a message that resonates with people and to attract opportunities to make money, to do more speaking engagements and to do other things with my platform. Just doing that for myself, I saw how valuable it was. And it was something that I wanted to provide for people who may need a service like this.
What would you say is the hardest thing about entrepreneurship?
Everything. I would say everything. I mean, it's really a daily struggle. If you're not making money, then you're not surviving. It's just everything is on you as an entrepreneur. It's up to you to make things work, every day in and day out. And it's a constant grind. It's a constant struggle. But if you love what you're doing, then it makes things a lot easier, going forward.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice. Like everything is hard, but you also get to reap the benefits of whatever it is that you do. And I think that's one of like the main drivers for those of us that have chosen entrepreneurship is the path. So
Right.
struggle is
You have to,
real, but the glory is also real.
yeah, you have to really enjoy it. You have to really love what you're doing, or it's not going to work out long term because there's going to be a lot of days where you don't feel like doing things or just things are not going your way. And, your why has to serve such a big purpose and you have to really believe in it to continue pushing forward, even, when nothing seems to be going your way.
Yeah, for sure. All right, talk to us a little bit about how you're organizing your finances now. What kind of strategies do you have in place? What kind of team members, if any, are you using? What are the tools and the strategies that you're using right now to keep your financial life organized?
So from a personal standpoint, I use a lot of applications. So I use Mint. I don't know if anybody's heard of Mint. I use Mint. I check it every day to see where, as far as investments, checking my net worth, checking income, like all these different things that it's all streamlined, my credit score, like all these things are embedded in the app. So it kind of makes it just seamless and easy to understand. I use numbers on my Mac computer for like budget sheets and the financial information that I need to keep track of, like all these different resources that we have nowadays. We live in a technological age where there's no excuse for you not to take the necessary steps to manage your money effectively because we have so many tools. I mean, there's so much information. It's just having the willingness to get out here and want to know what you need to do and asking questions. I think that's the biggest thing because there's no way you can know everything, but seeking information and advice from people who have an expertise in the financial industry or finding a mentor, somebody who can guide you through these different things is crucial. So I'm constantly asking questions to people that I know are more knowledgeable than me and that I know can help me.
What about your peers? How are you discussing maybe with your Fave Five that are your friends and the people that are around you? Are you guys having money discussions? Are they kind of like, bro, get out my business? Or yeah.
No, with my friends, we actually talk about money. I have one of my probably my best friend. We talk about stocks to invest in all the time. So he's a stock fiend. He's checking the market every day, and he'll talk about certain stocks that he thinks are good. And then we have these conversations because we know how important that they are. And I think more people have become comfortable talking about money in my circle. I'm the one to bring it up. I want everybody to win because there's an abundance of opportunities out here for people to make money, to earn money, to increase their income. And so if I know anything that I think can benefit somebody else, I'm not going to withhold any information. So I'm constantly trying to figure out ways to better people in my immediate circle and my friends and family.
What do you think is like the key for those that are out there that are nervous or afraid or embarrassed to talk about their finances? Like, why is it a thing that like most young professionals are not talking about their finances right now? Like, what's the kind of step or advice to get over that if they're not having discussions with others about money?
I think you really don't have a choice. If you want to have a better understanding of money, then you have to talk about it. You seek advice about how to get out of debt. There's information that you can get online, but talking to people, getting advice is so important because people have similar struggles and there's a level of transparency that, is kind of, in the air nowadays. And a lot of people are becoming more comfortable talking about topics that have been uncomfortable to talk about in the past, such as mental health and money management. So we're starting to see kind of a shift in the culture. So people are becoming more comfortable, but I think you don't have a choice when you really want to have a great understanding. You have to talk about things that are uncomfortable talking about. It's only going to help you in the future and help you with your career and as you advance.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think it's important to start having those conversations, to take that leap of faith, step out, and to realize that it's not, like I said, about the numbers. It's not about how much money do you have in the bank or how much money do you make. I think that's the thing that usually like shuts people down from wanting to have the discussion. It's really about like, what's the strategy? Oh, you got a 401k too? I don't really know how mine works, girl. Can you tell me a little bit more? Or I'm an entrepreneur. Like, how do you get a retirement plan if you're an entrepreneur? Ask your entrepreneur buddy about that. Just getting going with having those conversations and stepping out on faith that even if the other person doesn't know that the conversation's now started and you guys can look up the information together or keep lifting each other up.
Right. It's not about the numbers. It's about the education and everybody seeking the knowledge that they need to win long term.
All right. We have made it to the end. We are getting ready to do what I like to call the final sprint. So these are going to be some rapid fire questions, and we'll see what your sprinting abilities look like.
Cool. Let's get it.
All right. Let's do it. You got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Oh, $20. I'm investing. It's something. It's something.
What are you using to invest? How are you going to invest it?
I might use the Acorns app or something like that.
Is there? Worst money habit.
Worst money habit. Food. That's the one thing that I'll spend money on is food.
90% of us, yeah. The food is always a problem. All right, what's your best money habit?
I don't buy a lot of clothes or shoes. I'm not impulsive. Not an impulsive buyer.
You plan before you purchase, yes.
There we go.
All right. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
I would say go to the gym, but that costs membership. I'm constantly working, so I don't even think I have an answer. I'm pretty boring.
You have to add one of those to your list of things to do. That is fun, right? All right. What is your policy on loaning people money?
If I really trust that they'll pay it back, I'll loan.
Yeah?
I'll loan family members money. But
I'm going to ask him to borrow money after this.
But it can be more than like $200. Like if it exceeds that, then I'm gonna have to ask him more questions. Like I'm gonna have to do some more probing as to why you really need this money.
That's good. There's some follow up there. All right, finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when
your credit card gets declined.
Actually, like 80% of the people I've asked that question, that is always the answer.
Really?
That is an awkward moment. Like,
I don't think it's ever happened to me, but I can only imagine.
Like, no, for real, it works. Like, I'm serious.
Especially like when you're on a date or something, and it's like, that's the worst.
Can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
That's a great question. I would say, because I'm already pretty good with my money, I would say figuring out more ways that I can invest and make my money grow.
All right. So what's the action item to achieve that goal?
Seeking out people who have multiple streams of income, have invested in multiple different avenues, and asking them for advice.
Okay. I like it. I'm glad that I circled back to that one. All right. We have made it to the finish line. You have won the sprint. You are an Olympic gold medalist in the Worth Listening podcast world. So now it's time for you to stand on top of the podium, shout yourself out, tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, anything we can do to make your life better, help you get to the next level.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost, Lauren. For the listeners out there, you can follow me on social media. I'm on every platform, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that at Malcolm Lemmons. You can also follow my company, check out the website, www.playerspointagency.com. And then also my podcast, the Players Point Podcast. We're on all major podcast platforms. So there you go.
Awesome. And we'll have all that in the show notes. You didn't tell us the name of the book.
Oh, I got so much going on. The book is called Lessons from the Game. It talks about my experiences becoming a professional athlete, some of the lessons that I learned from basketball that I've been able to use in other areas of life. You can get on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com.
Awesome. Malcolm, thanks so much for being on the show today. And I hope everyone found this episode worth listening to.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it so much.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Malcolm's Money Memoir. Our word of the day today is going to be loans. Yes, good old-fashioned loans. What is a loan? It is the act of lending or a grant of temporary use of something. Temporary. Did you guys hear that part where it says temporary? So the idea is that someone gives you something and you're supposed to give it back. Well, the reason I picked loans as the word of the day today is because I think we need to be really strict with our loan policy heading into 2019. Why? because friends don't let friends have effed up finances. And this also applies to family. Family does not let family have effed up finances. So what does that mean? That means if somebody comes to you asking to borrow, they're in a tough financial situation, right? We need to start asking questions about why they're in that tough financial situation, not just handing the money over and hoping to get it back, or handing the money over and expecting to get it back. Let's hold one another accountable to taking each other to the next level, improving our financial situations so we don't have to borrow from one another. Because friends and family don't let friends and family have effed up finances. Let's get to the bottom of that loan. Let's sit down with that friend and say, hey, your budget must be a little bit off if you didn't make ends meet this month. Or maybe you don't have a big enough emergency fund if you need to borrow money from me right now to get that new tire. Let's start talking to the people we care about. Let's start sharing our money issues and having those money discussions with those that are in our inner circle. In order to go to the next level, we need each other. Let's make that our goal for 2019. I hope you found this episode worth listening to. As always, if you have questions, suggestions for guests, or you would like to share your own money memoir, do not hesitate to reach out to us at worth-listening.com.